Hey everybody, I went to the barber and they cut off my beautiful locks yet again. But we're not here to talk about things that we can see with our eyes, but things that we can hear with our ears. It's time to talk about the best albums of the year. I know what you're thinking. You're not the music guy. You're not Anthony Fantano. You're Karsten motherfucking Runquist. First of all, that's my cousin. I'm Karsten. And second of all, I like music. I listen to a lot of it. I have very strong music opinions, and I wanted to share my 10 favorite albums of the year because I think that matters. Starting at number 10 with Chromacopia by Tyler the Creator. I don't think this is going to be putting anybody onto this album. It was a very big album, but I really liked it. I've always really liked Tyler the Creator. I mean, honestly, in middle school, he was kind of everything to me. He was the first artist I truly fell in love with. And this is just another example of why he's so great. I think it's a lot better than Call Me If You Get Lost. I thought that one was good, but to be honest, I always thought the DJ drama stuff was a little annoying. And I know you can make the case that in this one, he doesn't really branch out of his usual style. He's not doing anything new. You know, I've heard it many times. It kind of sounds like leftovers from Call Me If You Get Lost or Igor. But that's fine. Don't fix what ain't broke. Is that right? It sounds really good. And at this point, it just sounds like he's kind of mastering this style. He's not trying to go in a new direction. He's trying to find what the best version of this can be. And this does sound like the most polished version of it that we've seen so far. No, it's not as good or as conceptual as something like Igor, but it's still really solid and really fun. Number 9 is You Like Music by Death's Dynamic Shroud. This is one I actually did find through Anthony Fantano, and I'm really glad I did because how exciting are they? It's really rare that I come across an electronic artist that it does this abrasive, noisy sound, and it surprises me. The last time this happened was with Igloo Ghost, but it feels like anytime I come across a new electronic artist that's trying to do this experimental, abrasive thing, it just comes off a little, I don't want to say try hard. I think there's a fine line between making something just crunchy and loud for the sake of being loud and something really interesting. And I think this record is very interesting. There is such an attention towards the sounds that they put in there. It just sounds like an absolute tornado of sound. Unlike a lot of electronic records that sound like this, you can actually pinpoint certain ideas and sounds and rhythms and I don't know, it's just all so carefully placed. It's a very hard one to talk about. I mean, you get the idea. It's just a very big record, but I've just had so much fun listening to it. Each time I listen to it, I pick up on a new detail. Whenever I'm angry, this is the kind of thing I put on. Number 8, another electronic record, 3 by Fortet. This I have not seen pop up on a lot of people's lists. I can see why. It's not even close to being the best Fortet album. I'll recognize that. Very inconsistent. I mean, he's just jumping through different genres, but I really like his stuff. There's something really magical and unique about his music that I have yet to find anywhere else. He finds loops that I can just listen to for hours and hours and hours. His track 3 Drums is one of the strongest examples of that. That song is, I didn't even know it was as long as it is. I think it's 8 minutes. Yeah, literally 8 minutes. But it just zooms by every time I listen to it. It's like a wave and I get caught in it and you can't pull me out of it. I need to finish it every single time. And 3 is just a really good example of that. I've always loved his stuff. I think he's made more interesting beats in the past. His other records have been way more focused than this, but this is such a whirlpool of a record where it's once I put it on, it's very hard for me to put it off. I listen to it a lot this year, so I had to put it on the list. I just had to. It kind of encapsulates everything I love about Fortet. GNX by Kendrick Lamar, kind of a buzzer beater of an inclusion here, just came out a few weeks ago. I did just move to LA, and this is a very LA sound, so there's also that. I mean, what do you need to say about Kendrick Lamar? I'm obviously a Kendrick fan. I've loved him since, Section 80. And although this isn't obviously his most conceptual or lyrically dense record, it is a lot of kind of, you could say, club hits. I think there's something to appreciate about that. I think there was so much pressure attached to his last record, Mr. Morale, and it's nice to see him just kind of be as free as he is on a record like this, where he can just kind of say whatever he wants, do whatever he wants, go in this direction and just commit to it. No, I don't think it's his best album, obviously, but I really like this direction that he's going in, and I love the commitment to the style on display here. He's also rapping over some production where I'm that is insane. How is he making anything out of this beat? It's really great. Loved this album, and I'm still listening to it all the time. Only God Was Above Us by Vampire Weekend really surprised me, to be honest. I mean, it's not like I've disliked Vampire Weekend recently. I actually am one of the few people I know that really liked Father of the Bride, even if it was a little bit bloated. But there is something about this album that feels like a step forward for them. With Father of the Bride, as enjoyable as it was, it did seem like they had their feet a bit stuck in the mud. Like they weren't really progressing past the sound they had established on their first two records. And in Only God Was Above Us, they are just going crazy. Like, there's horns and shit. It's like this jazz rock pop fusion. You can't really pin down a sound on this one, which is saying a lot for Vampire Weekend, who had a very iconic and instantly recognizable sound for a while. You still get what you want out of it. Like, Ezra Koenig's songwriting is still there. It's still very beautiful and poetic, but the production has just a little bit more oomph to it. You know, sonically speaking, it's way more abrasive than anything I've heard from Vampire Weekend before, and I really like that about it. It's very intricate and satisfying and weird. It surprised me. I was a big fan. Cascade by Floating Points, easily the best electronic record I heard this year. Clearly, I got really into electronic music in general this year, and this is the one that's like blown me away the most. It, on the surface, may not sound like anything special, I have to admit. It kind of does just sound like the Challenger's score. But in my opinion, it's like the best version of that. It's the best kind of house, techno, whatever other genre it is, that I could find this year. The mixing is unbelievable. It sounds amazing in my car. It sounds amazing on headphones, out of my laptop speakers. It's just never fails to put me in a trance. It is an incredibly consistent record. I mean, each sound feels like it belongs in, you know, the album, which sounds like a silly thing to point out, but you'd be surprised how hard that is. But at the same time, each of them have their own distinct moments and pieces to them. I can pinpoint each one individually, which is also very surprising for an electronic record. Floating Points just has so much attention towards like the atmosphere of his music. It's something I really appreciate about everything he's put out. He had that, God, I'm forgetting what it's called. The Promises album. That was like one of the best things I listened to that year. Still put it on fairly frequently on the record player. Just such a beautiful, beautiful record. And this is very different. This is definitely a lot clubbier, but it's got that same kind of like deep, moody feel to it that I love about Floating Points. Charm by Clairo. Always been a big Clairo fan. I wasn't crazy about her early stuff, but she's just slowly been getting better and better over the years. I really loved what's it called? I loved Immunity, but it felt like there was room for improvement in, I guess, like the songwriting. Like it could be a little bit more introspective. Sling, maybe a little too introspective, like very intimate record, but not something I found myself going back to very often. Charm is like the best of both worlds. It's like the most self-assured she's ever been. I said that in my music board review. She's so confident as a songwriter at this point. The production is like on point. It's again the case of someone just like mastering a style. It is a lovely homage to like sounds from the 70s, but at the same time it is her own unique thing. It is modern at the end of the day. She brings her own flair to it, her own Claire to it. I didn't expect to come back to this one as much as I did, but this is like one of my most re-listened to albums of the year. It's just such a good default when I get in the car. I Lay Down My Love for You by Jpegmafia, another artist who I've been a big fan of over the years, who just seems to get better and better each time. Although I will say, up until now, I really haven't found anything as quality as his debut record, Veteran. I actually don't know if that's his debut. But like that's where he really came alive, and it seems like he's just kind of been like building on that ever since, never really surprising me the way he did with that one. But this feels like the first time I really seen him like focused as an artist, really going in on like lyrics. His production has always been great. It hasn't surprised me in a while, but that's not to say I haven't enjoyed it. Every time I listen to a new Jpegmafia track, I'm like, yeah, that's as crazy and as weird as I wanted that to be. But this one surprised me. I feel like he makes a lot of really interesting, really bold choices on here. I mean, It's Dark and Hell is Hot is a crazy track. And then there's some slower stuff like I'll Be Right There and Either On or Off the Drugs, which is like probably one of his best songs of all time, if I'm being honest. He is at this point one of the best to ever do it when it comes to sampling, and that's on full display on this record. He shows his versatility. He cuts a lot of fat too, which I feel like he struggled with in past records. It's just a really solid album. I feel like if you still haven't hopped on the Jpegmafia train, you should listen to this one. Brat by Charli XCX. You knew it was coming. You're probably like, what the hell is number one? You're gonna be disappointed, just so you know. But I loved Brat, obviously. I've Again, I'm gonna say it again, I've been a fan of Charli XCX for a while, and this really does feel like her magnum opus. There really is not that much to say at this point because everyone's been talking about this album all year. That's really like where its specialty like shows, you know? People thought it was just gonna be a summer thing, and it's really held up. Like, you can still listen to this and still enjoy the hell out of it. It really does sound like a new classic, in my opinion. Another case of someone cutting the fat a little bit, I feel like Charli's records have always been so great and so amazing, but there's always like one or two songs that kind of lose me, that feel a little unfocused compared to the rest. Even songs themselves where like the ideas are so strong, but like all the way through, she can't really like carve a perfect song out of the ideas she comes up with. But Brat, every single track is a banger. Even the slow stuff is like so focused and so personal, and for how perfect it is, for how airtight this record is, there's still that like liberating feel to it, that you're like at a club and having fun and not thinking too much about it. It's like a lightning in a bottle situation. Record of the year is Cold Visions by Bladee. Big Bladee fan. Don't think this record has gotten the love that it deserves. My Spotify Wrapped says all you need to know about how I felt about this one. I didn't listen to like anything else really when I look back at it. All these other records that I just talked about, don't even give a fuck. This was the only one I listened to. The production is insane. It is like murky and claustrophobic and paranoid and incredibly addicting, clearly. It's so out there, it reminds me of 2019 with 100 Gex, where it's like, it was so crazy that nothing scratched the same itch. Like, to feel anything, I needed to listen to that album. And that's how I feel about this one this year. It's like, this is the only one that did it for me at a certain point. You could not excite me if it wasn't Bladee. He remains like one of the funniest writers out there. I mean, the lines on here, it's like every other line is the funniest or like saddest thing you've ever heard. He's so great, and like Charli, honestly, it feels like every album he's put out before this was so close to being perfect, and this is the first time he really like nailed it. I know people are saying it's bloated, but I wouldn't take a single track off of this thing. Loved it a lot. Those are my favorite albums of the year. What did you think? What are your favorite albums of this year, and why? Thanks for watching. Okay.